Mac Garcia.
Now, in the paragraph above your signature, you see where it says that you swear or affirm the truthfulness of everything in that affidavit.
Of course, yes.
Ma'am, just below that it says, before giving this statement, I was told it should contain everything I know that may be relevant to my testimony.
Yes, that's what it says, sir.
Ma'am, while you were writing this affidavit, we gave you those monologues to look at, right?
Well, you gave me the entire plays, and you gave me a bunch of excerpts from different exhibits, but I don't remember if I saw those monologues back to back or in isolation.
But while you were looking at the plays, you certainly saw the monologues as a part of it, right?
I remember, well, I know those monologues in the debate, and I guess I saw them in Alex's play. I mean, I certainly flipped through Alex's play.
You know that those monologues, they're exhibits 11 and 12, right?
Right, in this case. I think some of the other exhibits were eliminated, as far as I know.
Ma'am, if you look to lines 140 and 141, 141 and 142, you say exhibits 11 through 12 are true and accurate excerpts from the debate and the argument, respectively, right?
Right, exactly.
But isn't it true, ma'am, that sentence right there, that is the only sentence in this entire affidavit where you specifically mention those monologues?
Where I mentioned those parts of the play in particular, I guess. I didn't know that you wanted me to go through and talk about every single part of the show and what was written by whom. But I do talk about writing the show, obviously, extensively throughout my report.
Ma'am, that line right there that I just read, that is the only time in this entire affidavit you reference those monologues, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered and misleading.
Overruled.
Ma'am, that's a yes. The line I just read is the only time that you reference those monologues in this entire affidavit.
I mean, on line 127, sir, I say, this has been my play all along, and Jesse helped me fill in the dialogue. So yes, I didn't mention the monologues specifically, but I certainly talked about my role in writing the show.
Ma'am, I'm not talking about your role in writing the show in general. I'm asking about the specific monologues you claim you wrote.
Sure.
That's the only time you refer to them, right?
Right, yes, yes, exactly.
Isn't it true, ma'am, the word monologue, it appears nowhere in this entire affidavit?
I mean, I have to flip through it, but I'll take your word for it, sure.
All right, Ms. Garcia, let's see if we can agree on something.
Sure.
You're the Chief Creative Officer at Trifecta Entertainment, aren't you?
Yes, of course.
For the purposes of this lawsuit, you're their party representative, right?
Yes, exactly.
As the party representative, you know that Trifecta Entertainment has stipulated that Alex Taylor has a valid copyright on her play, right?
Yes, of course.
You know that Trifecta Entertainment has stipulated that Alex Taylor received that copyright in July of 2013, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now, let's talk about Trifecta's play, The Debate.
Sure.
Now, you're not the author of that play, are you?
I mean, it was a collaborative effort. That's how we do things generally at Trifecta, but the primary author was Jesse Parks, exactly.
Well, that's right, ma'am. Trifecta Entertainment has stipulated that the credited author was Jesse Parks, right?
Right, she was the main author of the work, yes.
You assigned Jesse Parks to first write a draft of that play back in September of 2014, right?
Yeah, that's when I first told Jesse about the idea. That's when we first started brainstorming.
Ma'am, September of 2014, that is more than a year after Alex Taylor's play was copyrighted, right?
Her play was cut. Yeah, June 2013, September 20. Yeah, that sounds right.
As the party representative, you know Trifecta Entertainment has stipulated that they copyrighted their play in September of 2015, right?
Right, exactly.
Ma'am, that's more than 2 years after Alex Taylor copyrighted her play.
Yes, I suppose that's true.
Thank you, ma'am. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Redirect examination.
Please.
May I proceed?
Please.
Ms. Garcia, when you were initially shown these two plays, were you shown the plays in their entirety?
Yeah, I mean, I was basically just given the two scripts.
Were you ever asked to do a side-by-side comparison of those two monologues specifically?
No. I mean, I was shown just like a bunch of different exhibits, a bunch of different excerpts, but not these two monologues specifically, no.
Ms. Garcia, at Trifecta, does one person do all the work on any given show?
No. I mean, we have a whole team of writers who are all kind of looking over each other's work, all pitching ideas. I mean, usually there's a main writer, but we get input from everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Further cross?
No, Your Honor. Can I approach and retreat?
Certainly.
Permission for Ms. Garcia to step down and resume her seat at council table.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like these? Yeah, of course.
With the court's permission, we now call Jesse Parks to the stand.
Thank you.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Jesse Parks.
How old are you?
I'm 25 years old.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a writer at Trifecta. It's a pretty good job.
How'd you get it?
Well, in my junior year of college, I was a theater major, and I wanted to be a playwright. And everyone sort of knows, outside of maybe Hollywood or Broadway, if you want to be successful in the entertainment industry, you basically have to work at Trifecta. And I knew they had this amazing summer internship where they hired all their interns at the end of summer. So I applied to the job, and fortunately I got it, and I've been working there ever since.
Now, at any point during that Trifecta internship, did you work with Alex Taylor?
I knew Alex. We were friends, and we shared a cubicle that summer.
How so? How were you friends?
Well, we had basically been best friends since the beginning of college. We were both theater majors, so we studied together, we worked on plays together, and we even ended up living together for a while.
So at any point during that entire friendship, did Miss Taylor mention anything about a play called The Argument?
No. I mean, I think she mentioned something about wanting to channel her creativity into a project after her breakup, but I thought it was just another collection of poetry. I mean, she writes poems all the time.
So you said a moment ago that you expected that every intern would be getting a job at the end of the summer. Did that end up happening?
No. I mean, halfway through the internship, we found out that due to money reasons, they could only hire one of the interns at the end of the summer.
How did Miss Taylor respond when you found out about that?
Well, I mean, Alex was furious. When we got back to our cubicle, she was slamming the desk and kicking the filing cabinet, and she kept ranting about how Trifecta were a bunch of traitors and they had all promised us jobs at the end of the summer.
You remember Miss Taylor's exact words?
I just remember she kept repeating, if they don't give me a job, I'm going to take them for all they're worth.
Did they end up giving her a job?
Well, no, I ended up getting the job.
And how did Miss Taylor respond when that happened?
I mean, when she found out, she wouldn't make eye contact with me. She literally the next day had already packed up all of her things and decided to move out of our shared apartment. And after that point, she got really distant, and after a while, we just stopped talking to each other altogether.
Okay, so I'd like to shift gears a bit and talk about a play you wrote in 2014, The Debate. Could you tell us when the first time was that you heard anything about a play with audience interaction or audience voting?
Well, Mac Garcia mentioned it to me.
What's your relationship with Miss Garcia?
Well, Mac is sort of my mentor. Ever since we met, we really connected intellectually and creatively. And so, she finds it really helpful if, she sits me in her room and she just pitches a lot of ideas to me. She's really a big idea person. And I sort of help her troubleshoot and prune those ideas.
So what exactly did she say about this play with audience voting?
Well, she suggested this idea of a Drew Walton murder mystery where the audience would actually be able to decide whether or not Drew Walton did it. And it would be told through this sort of series of vignettes, that's what she called it, which I interpreted to be like flashbacks back and forth through time. But at the same time, she mentioned that she had some reservations about it, and she just wanted my opinion.
What opinion did you give her?
Well, I told her I agreed. I thought that this was a really interesting idea, but I also thought that a murder mystery wouldn't be the best way to implement it. So she said, that's great. We can collaborate on this. She handed me what she had at the time, which were, dramaturgical notes, research, some character sketches she'd done, and said, go ahead and work on it. Come back to me if you have any questions or want my opinion about anything.
So what did you do with all of that material?
Well, I sort of stewed on it for a while. At first, I wasn't exactly sure what direction I wanted to take it in. And then one day, I was watching the news about the election between Drew Walton and Emily Richards, and I just realized, that's it. If we're going to be talking about Drew Walton, it can't be about some old murder mystery. It has to be about contemporary issues. It has to be about the election. It has to be exploring the people behind the public figures that we see. And then after that, I knew where I wanted to take this play, and I started to work on it.
So what did you do when you started to work on it?
Well, I sort of had this very clear conception of where I wanted to take it. So I went back to my office immediately, and I just started typing. And after a few months, I had a draft that I felt comfortable with. And then I sort of passed it off to the other employees at Trifecta. They made edits, of course, and then we put it up as a play.
You say that there were other employees at Trifecta that were doing work on this play, so I just want to be clear about where different parts came from. We've heard today that both your play and Miss Taylor's had an argument in Act 1.
Objection. Pursuant to Rule 615, Your Honor, Miss Parks has been sequestered here today, so to tell this witness what has been spoken about earlier in trial is both argumentative and is a violation of Rule 615.
Why don't you rephrase?
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Parks, where did you get the idea to have an argument in Act 1?
Well, Mac gave it to me.
Where did you get the idea to have a vote at intermission?
Mac also gave me that.
Where did you get the idea to have two separate Act 2s?
Once again, Mac.
We've heard today about some monologues.
Objection. Again, Your Honor, to Rule 615, this witness was sequestered.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm not going to tell her any specific pieces of evidence about these monologues. I'm just directing her attention to the monologues so that she knows what I'm talking about.
Your Honor, may
I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Your Honor, by starting her question by "we've heard today," it's a violation of Rule 615.
You were winning. The objection sustained.
Miss Parks, could you tell us a little bit about where you got the idea for the monologues at the beginning of Act 2?
Well, Mac gave them to me as a part of the character sketches she gave me, at the very beginning. I don't know if she actually thought that she wanted me to use them, but I loved them, and so I incorporated them into the play.
Now, Miss Parks, do you remember a grammatical mistake in the middle of those monologues?
Yeah.
Was it intentional?
Oh, no. I mean, I think Mac may have accidentally made a typo in the first draft she gave me, but then later we were looking at it and we just thought this would actually be a really interesting thing to incorporate into the play.
Objection. Speculation to what Matt Garcia was thinking.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Yes.
She's testifying to the decision-making process about how the decisions happen. I don't believe it's speculation. It's rationally based perception based on the conversation she had.
All right, well, the answer is stricken, and you can ask a question to follow up on that.
Yes, Your Honor. Just based on what you were thinking, was this actually a mistake?
No. I mean, I, along with other people at Trifecta, decided that this would be a really interesting element to add. I mean, Emily Richards here is just emerging from this incredibly intense debate, and she's emerged victorious. We thought that, we wanted to capture the realism of it, and so we thought that if we incorporated this one missed word, it could show just how emotional and how excited she was after this life-changing event.
Ms. Parks, did you ever hear from Alex Taylor about this play?
Yes, I did. The night after our debut show.
What did she say?
I mean, Alex said that I had stolen the play from her. She called me a thief and said she was going to take me to court. I mean, I didn't understand.
How do you respond to her accusations?
I mean, I told her that was not what had happened. The play was Trifecta's.
So then I'd like to give you a chance to respond to some things we've heard. Ms. Parks, did you actually have a copy of Alex Taylor's play on your flash drive?
No.
Did you borrow Alex's laptop on July 5th?
Yes. I wanted to video chat my boyfriend and show him something that I'd done.
Did you look at Alex's play at that point?
No. I mean, I only borrowed it because my computer crashed.
Where is your flash drive, Ms. Parks?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. In June, our company switched to the cloud, so none of us needed flash drives anymore. And at that point, I sort of just lost track of it.
Ms. Parks, what is the name of your flash drive?
Jesse's USB. Everyone at Trifecta has the same flash drives, and I didn't want anyone to take mine.
Permission to approach with what's already been entered as Exhibit 22.
You may approach.
Ms. Parks, what is the name of this flash drive?
New USB.
What do you have on your flash drive?
A ton of stuff. There were folders and documents everywhere of half-finished works that I'd done, finished scripts, random thoughts I had throughout the day, random things I just wanted to jot down. I mean, all my work for about 3 years was on that flash drive.
Is any of that stuff on the picture I just handed you?
No, there's only one document here.
Ms. Parks, is that a picture of what happens when you plug your flash drive into a computer?
No.
Did you copy Alex's play?
No, of course not.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Thank you.
Before I begin, may I set up an easel in the well?
Certainly.
May I begin?
Yes.
Ms. Parks, you just said something on direct examination, and I wrote it down to make sure I got it just right. You said that Matt Garcia gave me the monologues. Is that right?
Well, to be clear, she gave me the rough draft for them, and then I made some minor changes, and then other writers at Trifecta edited those. But yeah, she gave me the original version.
Ms. Parks, today isn't the first time you were asked about the writing process for the debate, is it?
No.
You gave an affidavit before coming to court today, didn't you?
Right, yes, I did.
When you made that affidavit, you were told you had to be truthful, correct?
Right.
You were told you had to include everything that might be relevant to your testimony today.
Right.
Ms. Parks, isn't it true? Today is the first time you've ever said Matt Garcia gave you the drafts of those monologues.
Objection, Your Honor. Might I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, in the affidavit to which Ms. Piacenti is referring, was actually made in February. These monologues were not isolated as
I'm sorry, is there an evidentiary objection?
Yes, Your Honor, misleading. Might I be heard?
Yes.
The affidavit to which Ms. Piacenti is referring was made in February. These monologues were not actually isolated as the relevant portions of the play until a month later in a pretrial order in March. And therefore, to question the witness about what she said in February before she knew that these were the relevant portions of the play is misleading to the jury because she didn't actually have a chance in that affidavit to respond to those specific portions which weren't given to her until a month later.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Do you need to?
No, I won't.
The objection's overruled.
Miss Parks, isn't it true today is the first time you've ever claimed that Matt Garcia gave you those monologues?
Well, I think I mentioned it when you asked me about it earlier.
You're saying that you mentioned those monologues in your sworn affidavit, Miss Parks?
Well, not in the words monologue specifically, but I did mention them generally.
So, Miss Parks, to be clear, in that affidavit, you never mentioned the word monologues, do you?
Well, no, I sort of used a catch-all term instead. I mean, there was a bunch of parts of the plays that other people had contributed to.
That's a yes to my question. You never used the word monologues?
The word monologue specifically? No, of course not.
Miss Parks, you're saying you didn't mention the word monologue specifically. You never mentioned the fact that Matt Garcia gave you the drafts of those monologues.
Well, I think I did refer to it.
But you didn't use the word monologues, correct?
Well, again, ma'am, when you showed me all these things, you showed me a bunch of parts of the plays. I didn't know you wanted me to talk about the monologue specifically.
Well, let's talk about what exactly you said. Your Honor, may I approach opposing counsel what purports to be the witness's affidavit?
Certainly.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
There you go, Miss Parks. You recognize that as a copy of your affidavit, right?
Right.
At the top, the very top, it says Affidavit of Jesse Parks, correct?
Right.
You flip to the back page. You see it has your signature, correct?
Right.
At lines 167, Miss Parks, you say, I swear or affirm the truthfulness of everything stated in this affidavit, correct?
Of course.
You're saying you weren't sure what you were supposed to put in here, but it also says at line 167, before giving this statement, I was told it should contain everything I know may be relevant to my testimony, and I followed those instructions, correct?
Right, ma'am, I did.
So you said you weren't sure that you actually had to mention those specific excerpts. But you'd agree with me, Ms. Parks, on lines 155 to 156, you identified the excerpts of the monologues when you wrote Exhibits 11 and 12 are true and accurate excerpts from the debate and the argument, respectively, right?
Right, ma'am. I said that they seemed to be accurate, but when I went in to write this, you showed me a bunch of different parts of the play.
Ms. Parks, I want to be clear. You specifically mentioned those excerpts in those lines, 155 to 156, correct?
Right, ma'am. But I didn't know that I should talk about other things as well.
Your Honor, move to strike everything after no as non-responsive to my question.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, this wasn't non-responsive. She's explaining why it was she said what she said in response to Ms. Piacenti's question. She is allowed to give a one-sentence explanation.
We'll let her elaborate on your questioning. The balance of the answer is stricken.
Ms. Parks, it's true. That's the only time you mentioned those excerpts in this entire affidavit, correct?
Well, again, I referred to it in other places, but if using the word monologue specifically, yes.
I'm not asking about monologues specifically, Ms. Parks. I'm asking about those excerpts. And that is the only time you mentioned those monologue excerpts at all, correct?
Well, again, about those experts exactly, yes, it's the only time. But I refer to it in other places.
Your Honor, move to strike everything after no as non-responsive to my question.
May I be heard, Your Honor? This was directly responsive to the question. She said, did you mention these excerpts? She said, yes, I mentioned them in other places. It may not be an answer she likes, but it's responsive.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Sure.
She said no and then went on to say she mentioned them in other places. That was non-responsive. She said no.
All right, the balance of the answer is stricken. I think we've got the idea.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Parks, let's talk about something we can agree on. Sitting there today, you're an employee for Trifecta Entertainment, correct?
Right, yes.
But on July 1st, 2013, you weren't an employee at Trifecta, were you?
I was an intern.
You were an intern. I'm sorry, Ms. Parks, a summer intern, right?
Right, yes.
On July 1st, 2013, that was the day that you found out only one intern would be getting the job at Trifecta, right?
Right, yeah. About halfway through, we found out that Trifecta didn't have the budget to hire everyone.
That's right. Trifecta was only going to be able to hire one intern out of 20, correct?
Right.
Let's talk about what else was happening on July 1st, 2013. You were living with Alex Taylor at the time, correct?
Right, yeah.
She was also an intern at Trifecta.
Right. We shared an apartment.
That same day, Ms. Parks, July 1st, 2013, you remember seeing a letter from the Copyright Office addressed to Ms. Taylor, correct?
Right, I think so.
So I want to talk about whether you had access to Ms. Taylor's play.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for a legal conclusion. May I be heard?
Sure.
Your Honor, access is actually one of the specific legal elements that opposing counsel is required to establish in their case. So to ask this witness whether she had access, which is a legal term, would be asking her to draw a legal conclusion. She can testify to what did and did not happen, but the word access is a legal conclusion which the jury has to decide, not Ms. Parks.
May I respond?
Sure.
First of all, Your Honor, I haven't asked a question yet. Second of all, Ms. Bays used the word access multiple times in her direct examination. The jury's already heard this word from a lawyer.
All right, I don't know what the question is yet, so why don't we wait till we get a question out and then we'll proceed. If the witness is confused by the use of the word, she can ask for clarification.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Parks, you'd agree with me, just a few days after you saw that letter from the Copyright Office addressed to Alex Taylor, you asked to borrow her laptop, didn't you?
Right. Mine had broken and I wanted to talk to my boyfriend.
So let's break down exactly what happened. You asked to borrow her laptop, correct?
Right.
She gave it to you.
Right.
She gave you her password.
Right.
And then you took Miss Taylor's laptop and you didn't return it until the next day, correct?
Well, I had fallen asleep talking to my boyfriend, so yes.
So I want to talk about what you saw when you logged into that computer. Your Honor, I'm approaching opposing counsel with what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 24. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
There you go. Ms. Parks, you'd agree with me that's a screenshot of a computer home screen, correct?
Right.
And that's how Miss Taylor's computer home screen looked when you borrowed it, right?
I think so. To the best I can remember, yes.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit 24. Both parties have waived all objections to the admission of this document.
That's our understanding as well.
All right, Exhibit 24 is admitted.
May I turn around an enlargement of it?
You may.
Ms. Taylor, Ms. Parks, you'd agree with me this is just a larger version of what you have in your hand, Exhibit 24, correct?
Right. That seems to be the case.
So let's talk about what you saw when you logged into Miss Taylor's computer. You see there's a computer icon at the top, right?
Right.
There's a recycle bin,
Right.
couple folders,
Right.
and there's one Word document.
Yeah.
Ms. Parks, the name of that one Word document is the argument, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, that's what it says.
When you used Miss Taylor's computer, you had a flash drive with you, didn't you?
Right. Yeah, I wanted to show my boyfriend some of the work I'd done and get his input on it.
So, Ms. Parks, you admit you plugged your flash drive into Alex Taylor's computer, correct?
Right.
Your flash drive you were using, it was blue, correct?
Right. Yeah, it was the trifecta flash drive.
Right, it said Trifecta Entertainment right on that flash drive, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with what's already been entered as Exhibit 21?
You may.
Ms. Parks, you'd agree I just handed you a flash drive, correct?
Right.
It's blue.
It appears to be so.
It says Trifecta Entertainment right on it.
Right.
But Ms. Parks, you can't tell me a single difference between that flash drive and the one you used to have, can you?
No, I guess not in terms of physical appearance. All of our flash drives look the same. Yeah.
Ms. Parks, you don't have your flash drive anymore, do you?
Well, no. I mean, like I said before, we switched to the cloud and I lost track of it.
You lost track of your flash drive in September of 2016, didn't you?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You specifically remember you lost your flash drive in early September of 2016, correct?
Right, that sounds about right.
Ms. Parks, I want to talk about what else was happening in early September of 2016. You're familiar with the rideshare company called Zip, aren't you?
Right, yeah.
You remember taking a rideshare in early September of 2016, don't you?
I think so, yeah.
Ms. Parks, you specifically remember taking a rideshare vehicle early September of 2016 with Mac Garcia, don't you?
I think so, yeah.
That date, it sounds right, early September of 2016 with Mac Garcia.
Right, yeah, that sounds about right.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you like me to take that down?
Sure. Ms. Parks, could you explain what you were saying on direct examination about what was going on when you wrote your affidavit?
Sure. I mean, when I wrote it, a bunch of different parts of the plays were shown to me, maybe dozens of pages, and no one asked me about the monologue specifically.
So did you say anything about the plays overall and who wrote them?
I did.
What did you say?
I can show it to you if you want.
Can you just tell us what you said?
Oh, yeah, sure. I said it was 100% based on trifecta material. I just wanted to sort of cover all my bases, you know.
An opposing counsel just said that that blue flash drive looked exactly like yours. Is it yours?
No, it's not.
Thank you. Nothing further.
No recross.
Thank you very much. You may step down.
Your Honor, may I approach and retrieve evidence?
Certainly.
Your Honor, before we begin, I just want to let you know, I don't mean any disrespect to the court during the examination, but the suit jacket button on my jacket fell off, and so it's going to be hanging open. Just wanted to let you know.
Happens to all the lawyers.
That's right. Well, we'll try and get out of here pretty fast. At this time, the defense calls Isaac Anderson to the stand.
Thank you.
And if I could request exactly how much time is remaining from the clerks?
You have 4 minutes and 49 seconds remaining.
Great. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Evening. My name is Isaac Anderson.
What do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a barber, run my own shop called Haircuts Nearby.
Why is it called Haircuts Nearby, sir?
That way we come up first on Google whenever somebody Googles Haircuts Nearby.
All right, sir. Well, can you tell us what you do on a daily basis at Haircuts Nearby?
We offer 3 things: haircut, shave, haircut, and shave. Same for men and women. Now, I started with a flat rate of $6. Started with $6, and then Haircuts Nearby ended up on Tumblr, Gram, or some nonsense, and all these hipster entertainment types started coming to the shop saying it was vintage and authentic.
Relevance to Haircuts Nearby being vintage or whatever else the witness is about to say.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Certainly.
If I may proffer, Mr. Anderson is simply relaying that hipster entertainment types started coming into his shop, and as I'm about to lay foundation, those hipster entertainment types were the people at Trifecta Entertainment.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Sure.
Well, it may be charming to hear that Haircuts Nearby was vintage or had a lot of entertainment types. This witness doesn't need to talk about Haircuts Nearby being vintage to say that Matt Garcia and Jesse Parks went to his store.
Well, the judge is kind of enjoying it. And I do note that the time is running, so the objection is overruled.
So, Mr. Anderson, you were saying?
Yeah, well, when they started coming in, I changed to $60, and now I have more people come in.
All right, sir. Well, you mentioned hipster entertainment types. What do you mean by that?
The people at Trifecta, mostly.
Sir, do you know Matt Garcia specifically?
I do, yes, sir. She comes in and gets her hair cut about every month now that she's got that shorter haircut she's got. And I've been cutting her hair since about 2011.
In all that time, sir, has she ever talked with you about her work?
Yeah, for some reason, people seem to think that conversation is a necessary component of the haircutting experience. So she talks a lot. She talks about her ideas, script she's working on, how nothing she ever does is good enough for her mother. I'm quoting now.
Sir, if we could maybe just focus on Miss Garcia's professional life.
No, I'm happy to do that, sir.
All right, sir. Has she ever mentioned an idea for a choose-your-own-ending play?
Oh, I remember that one real specific. She said she wanted to put on a play that was going to have a conflict in Act 1, and there was going to be an intermission where the audience could vote, decide what happened. There were going to be 2 different Act 2s. I thought it sounded like a real fine idea.
Well, when did she tell you about that idea, sir?
That was January 2013. Had to be.
Well, why do you say it had to be January 2013?
Well, in February 2013, that's when Max switched to that shorter haircut she's got now. She used to have this real long hair. She wore it in a braid, and I remember that whole conversation. I was messing with that braid, trying to get it just right.
Relevance to this witness messing with Matt Garcia's braid, Your Honor.
Why don't we just move on?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Anderson, I'd like to jump ahead to May 31st, 2013.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember getting a visit from Matt Garcia on that day?
I do, yes. I went back, looked at my appointment calendar, and Matt came in that day.
Can you tell us what happened at that visit?
She came in, got her hair cut, and she left behind her great ideas folder that day, I remember.
Do you think you'd recognize that folder if I showed it to you?
I do believe I would, yes, sir. She
Permission to
always has
approach
it.
with Exhibit 3.
You may.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, is this that folder?
It is, yes, sir.
Did you ever look inside this folder on May 31st when you found it?
Well, she left it behind. I looked in it, just wanted to make sure that there was something in there, see if it was worth my trouble to get it back to her. Yeah, I opened it up. I saw some paper, top page, had like typewritten font on it. I didn't actually take the time to read it, though.
Well, sir, if you could actually look inside Exhibit 3, I believe that there's a copy of Exhibit 4.
Yes, sir.
Does the writing on that page look similar to the writing you saw?
Yeah, it looks the same. It's a typewriter font, a little list. Looks kind of like Longhorns. You tilt it to the side.
Well, sir, if you could just quickly skim that page.
Sure.
Are there any similarities between what's written on that page and the ideas that Matt Garcia talked to you about back in January of 2013?
Yeah, I mean, it all looks the same. You know, argument in Act 1, intermission vote, 2 different Act 2s. I mean, that's what we talked about. Yes, sir.
Well, sir, did you ever get that folder back to Matt Garcia?
I was going to, but then actually I had Alex Taylor do it. She was one of my next appointments.
What happened when Alex Taylor came in that day?
That was actually one of her that was her first appointment. So we just chatted about, what she was up to.
And, sir, what did she tell you?
Well, she said that she was working at Trifecta, and it was always her dream to write for the stage. Well, it was actually kind of sad. She kept saying that, she always wanted to write for the stage, but she never seemed to have any concrete, original ideas. She couldn't ever seem to come up with something original. So I don't know. I just tried to tell her not to be too hard on herself.
So, sir, after Alex Taylor said that she didn't seem to have any sort of concrete or original ideas, did she take Matt Garcia's Great Ideas folder when she left?
Yes, sir. I gave it to her.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Cross, Your Honor.
Certainly.
Your Honor, before I begin questioning, may I approach the witness and retrieve that Great Ideas folder?
You may.
Do you want the piece in the middle? Or do you just want this one?
Actually, Mr. Anderson, you can keep that paper,
All
and
right.
I'll go ahead and take this folder, all right?
All right.
So, Mr. Anderson, let's start off with this folder, okay?
All right.
So I want to be clear about what you did and didn't see Miss Taylor doing with this folder, all right?
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Now, sir, you didn't see Miss Taylor reach into Matt Garcia's bag and take this folder, did you?
No, ma'am. They weren't in the shop at the same time.
Well, that's right, sir. Alex Taylor isn't the person who found this folder, is she?
No, miss. That was me.
Well, that's right. When you found this folder, like you told us, you handed it to Miss Taylor, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And, sir, when you gave it to Alex Taylor, you asked her to give it back to Matt Garcia on Monday, right?
Yeah, I told her to give it back to Mac. It's actually kind of strange because it was in the morning, and so I told her to give it back, and she said she'd get it back to her by Monday. And I mean, it was before the workday had started. I thought that sounded a little strange, but that's what she said she'd do. Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, move to strike everything after the witness answered yes to he told Alex Taylor to give this folder back to Matt Garcia on Monday.
Your Honor, the witness was simply offering context for the statement.
He can get the context when you question it. The answer is stricken.
Yes,
But
Your Honor.
Everything after no.
Thank you. So, Mr. Anderson, when you gave this folder and you told Alex Taylor, to give it back to Matt Garcia, Miss Taylor told you she would, right?
Yes, ma'am. We were getting along real well. She's from Tennessee, so gotta share her background.
That's a yes.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Anderson, let's be clear about what you did and didn't see Alex Taylor doing with this folder, all right?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you gave this folder to Miss Taylor, you didn't see her look inside of it, did you?
No, miss. She seemed like she was in a bit of a hurry. She grabbed it and left.
So that's a no. You didn't see Miss Taylor look inside of us, right?
I didn't really look over. I didn't see her do that. No, ma'am. She left pretty quick.
In fact, Mr. Anderson, isn't it true you never saw Alex Taylor open this folder at all, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, she left in quite a hurry when I was done.
So that's a no. You never saw Miss Taylor open
yes,
this
ma'am.
folder?
Absolutely. I didn't see that. No, ma'am.
And Mr. Anderson, isn't it true Miss Taylor never told you anything about the contents of this folder, did she?
No, I don't believe that ever came up. No.
So then let's talk about what you do know about this Great Ideas folder, all right?
All right.
Now, when you were handed that piece of paper, Exhibit 4 on direct examination, you said that it looked just like the one that you found inside this folder, right?
I said it looked like it's got about the same font, same typewriter font. Yes, ma'am. Now, to be clear, I can't confirm that it's exactly the same one, seeing as I never read it.
Well, sir, let's walk through that step by step.
All right.
When you found this folder, like it told us, you peeked inside of it, right?
Yes, ma'am. Just took a quick look-see.
And you saw that there was one page of paper inside of it, right?
I'm not sure how many pages were in there. I'm not sure.
Sir, you remember that today's not the first day you've been under oath, right?
Yes, ma'am. I remember.
You remember that a few months ago you wrote an affidavit for this case, right?
I did. Yes, ma'am. Had to get it notarized and everything.
Today wasn't the first day you saw Exhibit 4, right?
No, ma'am. Don't believe so.
You remember that when you wrote your affidavit, we showed you Exhibit 4, didn't we?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
And we asked you if that was the piece of paper you found inside this folder, didn't we?
Yeah, it was the piece of paper I saw inside the folder. Yes, ma'am.
Well, sir, that day, under oath, true or false? You said, I cannot
Objection,
identify.
Your Honor, hearsay. Opposing counsel is reading off of an out-of-court statement.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Sure.
The witness just testified that he identified Exhibit 4 as the document he found inside this Great Ideas folder. I'm just pointing out that that's not what he said 2 months ago when he was under oath.
Objection's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Anderson, I'll ask you again.
Yes.
When you were under oath 2 months ago writing this affidavit,
Yes, ma'am.
true or false? You said, I cannot identify whether Exhibit 4 was or was not the document inside that folder.
Yes, ma'am, that's exactly right. Like I said, I never read it. I can't be sure if it was the same one. Yes, ma'am.
And sir, because you never read Exhibit 4, you can't tell us anything about the contents of that document, can you, sir?
Well, I just read it now, so I could, yes, ma'am.
But sir, when you were writing your affidavit in February of 2017, you didn't mention anything to the attorneys about the contents of that document, did you, sir?
No, miss, I talked about the conversation that I had with Miss Garcia, and that's about the same things that are on that document, but no, I never told them about what was on the page. Like I said, miss, I didn't read it.
Your Honor, move to strike everything after the witness said no to my question.
Everything's stricken after no.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Nothing further.
Can I inquire as to how much time I have for redirect examination?
You have 17 seconds, counsel.
17 seconds. All right. May I proceed briefly?
Indeed.
Sir, opposing counsel asked you about what you saw inside of that folder.
Yes, sir.
Did you only see a single sheet?
I'm not sure how many sheets I saw. I saw the top page was this. I don't know if there's paper underneath it, sir.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Recross, Your Honor.
Certainly.
Now, Mr. Anderson, I'm going to take you back to February of 2017 when you wrote this affidavit again.
Yes,
All right?
ma'am.
You remember that you were told to tell the entire truth, right?
That's what the lady said. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, true or false? When you were under oath that day, you said, I peeked inside and saw a typewritten page.
Yeah, I said I saw a typewritten page, which I did. I don't know how many pieces of paper were beneath it, miss.
Well, sir, isn't it true you didn't mention anything about any other pieces of paper you saw inside that folder when you were under oath?
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, I didn't read them. I don't know if they were there. I said I saw a typewritten page. I don't know how many pieces of paper were beneath it, miss.
Sir, that's a no. You never mentioned anything about any other pieces of paper inside that folder. All you told us about was that one typewritten page, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Nothing further.
No redirect, Your Honor. We ask that Mr. Anderson be allowed to retake his seat.
Thank you. You may step down.
And at this time, Your Honor, the defense rests our case in chief. We ask for a short break before closing statements.
That would be 5 minutes?
That'd be great.
Your Honor, while we're in recess, may I set up the well for closing argument?
Certainly.
That was 4 impeachments in 3 witnesses.
Yeah, that was a little bit wild for a national final.
I've never seen something like that.
I don't think there have been that many impeachments, and frankly, that many good impeachments. Again, we were talking about briefly in the break between the second and third witness, the fact that, again, to the extent that this was an even round, and I think you could make the argument that this has been in Virginia's favor up to this point, but to the extent any judge wasn't of that opinion up to this point, I think the second witness really pushed it in UVA's favor. Now, that being said, comparing character witness to character witness, how would you put Dennis Tinchelli's Devin Harris from Virginia against Adam Clark's Isaac Anderson for Yale?
I mean, I love character witnesses. I love big, great character witness battles, and that's what we saw. It's a question of likability and credibility. I think both of them were very likable. I may prefer Yale's character witness as a bit more likable. The jokes at the top I thought were hilarious, but then it becomes about credibility. And I think the double impeachment there is really going to hurt credibility, I think, whereas he's a 10 on direct, even though they're going so fast to make up for the constrained time,
right.
I'll bet you that cross score is going to drop.
I think it might for some judges. The flip side is, it seemed to me that witness really did maintain their composure and credibility on cross. I think the pocket about whether him seeing a typewritten page meant that he saw only one typewritten page that seemed to be a little bit semantic. So that's the only knock that I would put on that impeachment. But definitely, Virginia seemed very much in control during that whole case in chief. And if you're Yale, you don't want that, obviously.
No, not at all. And to your point about it being semantic, I think a whole lot of the cases in chief that we've seen are semantic. I can't remember a national final round where multiple cross-examinations centered on the grammar, because that's the nature of this.
Right.
And as someone who's less familiar with this case than yourself or the competitors, I find it difficult to follow some of the dates and the eccentricities here. I think it just comes down to a question of which side do I believe more?
Right.
And that's what this is all about. What do judges find trustworthy in mock trial? I think Yale went out of their way to have very chatty witnesses that spoke like real people might speak, whereas Virginia went out of their way to be very slow and clear and composed. As a matter of fact, I wrote down here that Sarah Cohen's witness, the first Yale defense witness, reminds me a lot of Rachel Bloom from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. It was that exact same style of cadence and delivery.
Very similar style. And I did find myself getting lost, and as someone who's a little bit familiar with the case, I helped proofread the case, but I'm not one of the authors. I found myself getting lost in both of those first two directs. I wasn't sure exactly not necessarily what the point was, but there didn't seem to be a very specific structure similar to what we saw with Virginia. The knock on the Virginia style is that it's overly structured. It seems robotic or scripted. But there's a benefit to it in that you have no doubt when it's over what the point was they were trying to make. I think the flip side here was that there wasn't enough structure with what Yale was trying to do with their case, and this case demands that kind of structure because the timeline and who did what when is so critical. That's how either side would prevail in this case if it were actually tried. And those details just got lost with the two trifecta witnesses that Yale put up on the stand.
I agree. I think I get the overall thrust of Yale's case. It's really, did the plaintiff steal it or did the defense steal it?
Sure.
And I think it's a reasonable theory. Like, if I was a juror in this case, I'll bet after the end of the defense closing argument, I won't be convinced to the preponderance standard or whatever standard it is in this case.
Right.
I'm not sure I will, but this isn't just about proving it. As a matter of fact, it's a matter of following and everything as points assigned to it. And I'm not sure how I would be scoring it. I think that Yale has a lot of charisma, especially Michael Burns. I think he's very likable and very charismatic.
Absolutely.
We saw that he was kind of laughing along with his witness. And normally that's a knock on an attorney, but it felt real to me in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the judges were really reacting well to that, too. Obviously, when Virginia was continuing to be not necessarily aggressive, but they were still putting on the full court press in terms of lodging objections to the hairdresser's testimony, to the barber's testimony. Anytime you get the objection to sort of that initial background character building pocket, you know that you have a team that's not just going to sit back and let the other team score points. Virginia was still making their presence known there. But the fact that the presiding judge said, no, I'm kind of enjoying this. That sort of gave you an impression of, how the judges were reacting. And it seemed that the room was really reacting well to that character. Maybe a little bit more than the room was reacting to the rideshare driver testimony in UVA's case in chief. But I think Yale was kind of hurt by the fact that they were really trying to speed up the last part of that direct.
Right.
And Virginia really capitalized by having a lot of time available for cross, and they made the most out of every possible second of those crosses.
I have never seen an impeachment like the one on that first witness. You were out of court, and then you walked into court, and then you sat down, and then you thought about your life, and then I asked you a question, and then you responded to the question. Anyway, I'm going to impeach you by omission now.
It was a little bit funny for those of us familiar with mock trial, but I think if you're sitting in the room, it's very effective if it's Virginia owning the process, and they really owned the process with that structure through all three of those witnesses. I also thought that the Yale attorneys found themselves a little flat-footed in terms of responding to the objections. Virginia's objections were incredibly concise, clear. they almost came across as a little bit exasperated or frustrated.
I agree,
with Yale.
Especially when the relevance objections came on the last witness. I think that was one of the few Virginia missteps in this round, because by trying to shut down a likable witness, you come off as inherently less likable. You're being a buzzkill in mock trial terms.
But I think with some of the objections on the first two witnesses, it was essentially the Virginia attorneys throwing up their arms and saying, Your Honor, why am I even having to make this objection or respond to this objection? It is so obvious that we are right, that why are we even arguing this? And it was very short and concise, whereas a lot of the Yale objections or responses to objections, they were very long. They didn't really get to the point very quickly. And I think, those are parts of the trial that are not scripted.
I agree.
Those are the things that the judges are going to key in on to see how well the attorneys are able to adapt to things that happen. And I think overall the Virginia attorneys have been able to adapt a little bit better than the Yale attorneys on those objections.
I agree. I think a big Yale mistake in this round was making the objection with no grounds, then trying to save it by saying that they're misrepresenting the evidence. I think that is the go-to in this case. And I think Yale is just using every objection as a chance to make a closing argument. And to an extent, you should do that. You should always be selling it to the judges, but I'm not sure about how much they're considering grounds. We haven't heard any case law-based objections throughout the whole trial. I don't know if there are any.
There are case law objections available, but we've heard none of that. I was expecting we might hear some based on some of the witnesses offering comparisons between the facts that are available. That's certainly something that the competitors can object on. It was interesting that we heard that objection about the witness offering a legal conclusion over access. That was a very bizarre sort of exchange. And that was another one of those instances where I believe it was Alexandria Piacenti from Yale seemed to sort of throw up her hands and said, they're the ones that use the word access. Why are we even discussing this right now? I'm being told that the judges are wrapping up their recess, and we are getting to the final 20 minutes of the trial, the closing arguments and the rebuttal. Let's take it downstairs.
Are you ready to proceed with closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor. You can't handle the truth. I'll be back. Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. Members of the jury, those lines were short. Maybe just a couple of words in a 2-hour-long movie. But you probably knew those words weren't mine. That's because they're the most important lines from the most important parts of those movies. So even if I changed around the surrounding scenes, we all know that if I put those words in a script and claim them as my own, that would be copyright infringement. And we know that's what Trifecta Entertainment did. But as the plaintiff, we couldn't just tell you that. We had to prove it. To prove copyright infringement, we had to show you 3 things. That Alex Taylor had a valid copyright, and no one today disputes that. But we also had to prove to you by a preponderance of the evidence, or just more likely than not, that Trifecta Entertainment had access to Alex Taylor's script, and the Trifecta script was substantially similar to it. Now, before I go any further, I want to make sure we're all very clear about what substantial similarity means. Because as the judge will tell you, this isn't just a numbers game. If you copy the most important lines from the most important parts of a work, even if the entire rest of the 2 works is different, that's substantial similarity. And we know that's what Trifecta Entertainment did. We know it because we followed the script just like Miss Grandi told you we would. Followed the script from the computer where Alex Taylor wrote it, to the copy the defendant made of it, to the cab where that copy was found. So first, the computer where Alex Taylor wrote it. And on this, members of the jury, timing is everything. Because no one disputes that Alex Taylor got her valid copyright on July 1st, 2013. no one disputes. That's the same day Alex Taylor and Jesse Parks found out only one of them would get the job at Trifecta. And no one disputes that just a few days later, Jesse Parks asked to borrow Alex Taylor's computer. And so the only question is what Jesse Parks did when she had Alex Taylor's computer all to herself overnight. And to answer that, we followed that script to the copy the defendant made of it. Because the defendant knew better than to take Miss Taylor's entire script verbatim. So they made some changes. But Professor Rosenthal showed you how the defendant didn't change nearly enough. Because these monologues are practically identical. And not just in ways that make sense, but even in ways that don't. Because why, members of the jury, would you be talking about a renewed commitment to your future in the context of a political debate when it's clearly referring to a relationship? And how in the world would the same typo end up in the same place in the same monologue if these two scripts were written independently? It's not a coincidence this typo's here, members of the jury. It's a copy. So let's talk about something else that's not a coincidence. Because the defense, they've been trying to tell you all day that the reason these two monologues are so similar, the reason there are all these words in common, is because Alex Taylor stole Trifecta script. Members of the jury, you learned today that before we got to court, neither Matt Garcia nor Jesse Parks had ever before mentioned those monologues, even when they were giving sworn affidavits before coming to court today. It's not a coincidence, members of the jury, that after hearing all of our evidence during our case in chief, after they had the opportunity to take a break, go out in the